What's up, my wizards? It's Dev. From Mtg, we like magic, and today we're stirring up a sauce with Dominaria ingredients again. Dominaria marinara, if you will. But when I asked Patreon what brews they'd most like to see, Mono Green Stompy was a list they pushed super hard for. And those are people with good taste, or at least people who know how to recognize when a deck is real. Like, even though we haven't seen all of Dominaria yet, I still feel like this deck doesn't need to get a single new piece from here on out to be, like, ready to go on day one, you know? This deck is an actual contender because of some of the stuff that Dominaria has already given it. And the most impactful card for the deck from Dom, and really the most impactful Dominaria card for the next standard period, is Llanowar Elves, definitely. Lawnmower Man is back, just in time for spring. Proper timing. But anyway, this really kind of just changes everything. The fact that we have Llanowar Elves back, you know. You've heard the phrase, everything old is new again. Well, with Elves in the standard now, everything turn 3 is turn 2 again, you know. Three drops that were already good in this format are now, like, way better than they were even, you know. And it makes some 3 drops from Dominaria way better than they already would have been. Just Llanowar Elves being in standard changes a lot. Now, honestly, Llanowar Elves didn't need any help to be good in the upcoming standard. It was going to be impactful one way or the other. But there is a card out of Dominaria that you're obviously meant to be wanting to play on turn 2 with some help from the Elves, and that's Steel Leaf Champion. We're going to play all 4 of this, too. The SLC Punk. No one will get that joke or remember that movie, but anyway, this is a great creature to be playing on turn 2. Just stupid stats on turn 2, and turn 3 for that matter. Like, you don't even have to get Llanowar Elves. This is a fine turn 3 play too. And the text box on this, you don't want to just ignore it. I know it doesn't look like much, but it's actually crazy. Because especially if you get it turn 2, there's really not much around that can be blocking this that early in the game, or even later in the game. There's a lot of stuff this gets well around. Like, I hope you don't mind me reading, but I've got a lot of stuff written down. Here's all the stuff this can dodge, not just in the early game, but even later. Whirler Virtuoso and the tokens it makes. Dodging Thopter tokens is a big deal. Nothing can jump block it. Like, no tokens in the format, more or less, can do anything about this, and that's a big deal. You know, you got Servo Exhibition, SRAM's Expertise, Anointed Procession, Dex, period, you know. All manner of mono-red creatures other than On-Crop Crasher or Hazoret herself. Well, they're not going to be too worried about blocking you in the first place, but they can't, even if they wanted to. Bomat Courier can't be left up to chunk block this and get a grip full of cards. That's pretty important right there. And there's a bunch of other stuff we can keep reading. Winding Constrictor, if it doesn't have any counters or anything. Small and early game Walking Ballistas, that's also pretty important. Servant of the Conduit, and let's not forget other Llanowar Elves. Champion of Wits, Glint Sleeve Siphoner. There are so many heavily played creatures in the format that can't chump block this, and that's a huge deal because, I mean, it does a quarter of their life total at a time. So even if you're only getting in with Champion, you're hurting them bad. But another 3-drop that I'm really looking forward to playing on turn 2 in the next standard is Jadelight Ranger. Mama Luigi! Looking good in the overalls and all, but anyway, this is even more like Luigi than it was in the last standard, because not only does it look the part, it plays the part. It's second fiddle at this point to another incredible 3-drop. If SLC is Mario, this is definitely Luigi, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, and that doesn't mean Luigi's bad. For that, I love Luigi. But in any case, this definitely has reasons why you'd still want it over a card like, you know, Steel Leaf Champion. Mostly because it lets you set up draws on subsequent turns. It lets you get through land pockets or pick up land if you need it. You know, there's all kinds of good things about Jadelight. The card might be really high variance, but it's always going to do something for you. And another good thing and kind of subtle thing about cards like Jadelight and some of the other creatures that we're playing in the deck is that it's important to have these value creatures that you'll go ahead and get something out of regardless of whether or not it's removed. Like, you can use a Jadelight Ranger to bait removal out of the opponent's hand before you play a Steel Leaf Champion or another more impactful creature. That way, you got a removal spell out of their hand, and you got some value out of the card, even though it didn't stick around. But again, that's not to say that this isn't a powerful card. This was a powerful enough card on turn 3 in the previous standard, so when you have the ability to play it on turn 2, it's really dumb. So, again, don't take that whole spiel about baiting removal to mean that the card isn't good. The card is absolutely ridiculous and even better than it's ever been. Now, I'm also going to play at least a pair of Rishgar Pima Renegades here at the 3-drop slot. I do want to play a bunch of 3-drops. I mean, again, even if we don't get Llanowar Elves, we can play these on turn 3. But since we do have Llanowar Elves, I want to play a few more 3-drops than we would normally play. Don't worry, we're still playing some 2s. We'll get there. But I do want to play a couple of copies of Rishgar because on turn 3, this is fine, but again, On turn 2, this puts a counter on Llanowar Elves. Sure, it already taps for mana, but at least it makes Llanowar Elves a little bit bigger, puts a counter on itself, and now you can get like turn 3 Verdurous Gearhulk super easily. That's a stupid playline. We should probably play a couple of copies of Rishkar. And it's fine outside of that application too. Even if you're not doing stupid stuff on curve, Rishkar is still another value creature. Again, even if they remove it somehow, it at least provided extra power worth of value for you. I mean, I guess they can't tap for mana anymore, but whatever, who cares? You made them bigger, and you got the value out of Rishkar that you wanted, even though it died. So I definitely think that even though there are some 3-drops that outclass this, it's still worth playing a couple of copies. It's worth the rish. See what I did? That was dumb. That was very dumb. I'm sorry. But we're going to finish up the 3-drops here. There's a couple more, but then we're done. I promise. We're going to play 3 copies of Ronus the Indomitable in the deck to cap off the 3s here. And it was just 2 copies of Ronus when I started things out, but you quickly realize that Ronus is really, really important to this deck. Let me put it this way. More long games are won due to having a Ronus out than any other card in the deck. Like, this card wins you a bunch of games in the long game. Having a mana sink that gives creatures trample is super important once you have 6 or more mana to spend, or even just the 3 for that matter. And another reason to play multiple Ronus, by the way, is because Vraska's Contempt, Cast Out, Ixalan's Binding, these are some of the most heavily played removal pieces in the format. You could make a case that Vraska's Contempt is one of the most played cards in the format, period. So we have to tax the amount of Contempts they have. You know, we don't have the juicy targets they're looking for. They really want to spend their Contempts on Scarab Gods, Hazoret for Kindling Phoenix, but they will cast their Contempts on our Ronus. It's still a fantastic target for that spell. So we have to have a couple of Ronuses more than we might usually want to play, because it's very likely going to get hit by a Contempt or something similar at some point during the game. I know I'm making the dice to removal argument, but again, these are very, very played cards in this format, and a good plan for preparing for them is to play more copies of these than you might normally play. I think an extra copy is definitely in order. Card is that important for the deck. But of course, we do want to play some 2-drop creatures. I mean, we won't have Llanowar Elves every single game. Silly to think that we will. And we want to have as many lines available to the deck as possible in the early game. So we're going to still play 10 2-drop creatures, or creatures. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. But I'll start things off here with the 4 copies of Merfolk Branchwalker that we're playing. Baby Luigi. Just like Mama Jadelight, this is a high variance card, but just about any result that you land on is a good result, you know? You can either get a relatively big creature early in the game, or you can get a land, which is totally fine, because it'll fix, you know, not only will you have that 3rd land for turn 3, but if you already have that, you'll have the 4th land for turn 4, and those are very important drops for the deck to make. Jadelight helps you make those, and so does Branchwalker. Now, I'm also going to play 3 copies of Ronus' Last Stand. Not technically a creature, but it makes a huge stupid token for us, and that's all we care about. I think this card got way, way better now that Llanowar Elves is in the format. You know, if you do play this on turn 2 via Llanowar Elves, then you'll have 3 mana available on turn 3, given that you can drop a land, which is... that's literally 3 times as much mana as would normally be available to you when you drop a turn 2 Ronus' Last Stand. That's a big step up. Or, conversely, you could just go turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 3-drop, and then turn 3 Ronus' Last Stand. That way, come turn 4, you'll have plenty of mana to work with. This card still works really well. Llanowar Elves are not. On turn 3, 4, 5, you know, somewhere in the mid-game, the card is great. You can just pay 2 mana for it, and then next turn, the tax won't really be super high because you can still play most of the cards in the deck. Now, to finish off the 2-drops, I'll play 3 copies of Resilient Kenra here. Now, one thing I'll note this kind of has in common with Ronus' Last Stand is that this is at least somewhat fine on turn 2, not ideal, but it arguably gets even better on later turns. You know, turn 4, turn 5 Resilient Kenra can make a huge difference, give you a body and give a boost to one of your dudes to get a more profitable attack step. So not only can this be played on turn 2, even better a little bit late a lot of the time, which is great in a deck with Llanowar Elves. Ideally, we want to be casting a 3-drop on turn 2. If we don't get that chance, we can just play Kenra on turn 2 if we have no other choice. But if we do get the chance to play a 3-drop via Llanowar Elves, well, that opens us up to crazy stuff that we can do with Kenra on turn 3 or 4. So, again, I really like the flexibility and the way that it sort of plays with Llanowar Elves. In more than one way, actually. You know, if you go Llanowar Elves turn 1, and then you have no better plays other than Resilient Kenra, you might should have mulliganed that hand, but just in case you want to play aggressive, you can go Kenra on turn 2 just by tapping your lands, give your Llanowar Elves a boost, and swing in for 3 early in the game. So if you want that line, it too is available to you. But Kenra's just a really good role player in the deck. There's a lot of different lines we can take thanks to this card. It's great when we eternalize it, you know, +4/+4 to something's awesome. And having a 4/4 guy that's resilient to sweepers and stuff is also something the deck definitely wants. Now, we're not playing too many 4-drops here. I just don't think that there's a whole lot that are just phenomenal for the deck. You know, the two that we have the option between are Ripjaw Raptor, a card that I do really like, but a card that I really like to try out is Territorio Allosaurus, so I'll give it the nod here and play 3 copies. Now, the reason I'm interested in Allosaurus is because it can be removal, and we just don't really get that chance on green cards. You know, even though this is 7 mana if you want it to be removal, we'll get there in the late game. You know, if you draw this late, turn 12, which a lot of games will get to. Realistically, a lot of games of Magic last kind of a long time. So we will get there a lot of the time. A top-decked Allosaurus that we can kick is a godsend, I would imagine, a lot of the time. You can kill a great deal of creatures in Standard with this thing and keep it alive. But just in case you don't want to kick it, you want to play it on turn 3 after Llanowar Elves, it's a 5/5 for a really low investment. So even if you don't kick it, I think the body on this is pretty much worth playing. That's awesome. And note that it can like block, kill, and survive against Scarab God tokens, Godfarer's Gift tokens. That's a pretty sweet bonus for a 4-mana 5/5 in this format particularly. So I like a lot about this card, and just really being able to play as removal, no matter how much it costs, really puts the card over the top. I think it's going to be pretty decent. Now, we'll also play 4 whole copies of Verdurous Gearhulk in the deck. I've already talked about the one ridiculous play line where you go turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Rishkar, turn 3 Verdurous. That's really hot, but even if you have to wait until turn 5 or 6 to play your Verdurous, it's awesome. Even if you have to wait until late, you know, again, this is another card that if you top deck it late, it's unbelievable. It's a crazy top deck. Bust 3 Stalemates helps you win a game really easily. You can either have an 8/8 dude, you know, that busts 3 defenses easily, or you can spread the love on a big board. There's just, you know, another relatively versatile card that once it resolves, just wreaks havoc, wins games by itself. Bottom line, Verdurous is still just as murderous as it ever was, and possibly even more so now, again, with Llanowar Elves in the formats. Elves makes everything better. You know, whether you're ahead or behind, the card is good. Whether you played it early on turn 3, which you have the option of, or you play it, you know, on turn 9 as a top deck, the card is great in just about any situation, given that you have the mana to play it. So I am not ashamed of playing all 4 copies. The card is that good. And finally, as far as the creatures, we'll work in 1 copy of Ghalta Primal Hunger. I really wanted to play more copies, but honestly, not going to be tricked into using slots on this that could probably be better used elsewhere. Let's just be honest. You know, if we do draw a Ghalta on turn 6, 7, 8, whatever, you know, if we top deck this relatively late in the game, or even turn 15 for that matter, it's incredibly likely that we can get it onto the board for just 2 mana, and that's another threat the opponent has to worry about, you know. I was talking about taxing your opponent's Vraska's Contempts and other removal a little bit earlier. Well, we have a butt ton of creatures in this deck, and a lot of them are really big. Ghalta included, Verdurous Gearhulk, Territorial Allosaurus, Steel Leaf Champion, Ronus' Last Stand. I mean, we really tax our opponent's premium removal in the deck, and by the time we get a Ghalta down, it's likely that they've already used some of the better removal in their hand. So yeah, Ghalta can be contempted away, but maybe they've already used their contempt on a Ronus or Steel Leaf Champion, and now they're kind of out of gas when it comes to dealing with this dumb 12/12 trample that's breathing down their neck. So that's how we've drawn things up, but for those purposes, I think we only really need to play 1. Now, besides Ronus' Last Stand, the only non-creature spell I'm playing in the deck is the 3 copies of Blossoming Defense, but we're definitely going to play it. The card is still super important for all the reasons it was always important. You know, this helps all your creatures dodge removal. Yeah, I've been talking about Vraska's Contempt and Cast Out and stuff this video, but this is a 1-mana way to shut down their 4-mana removal spell that says you lose. So, Blossoming Defense is still great as a counter spell. It's great as a combat trick, helps your creatures survive when they otherwise wouldn't, or just pushes through extra damage that you might need to end the game. All this for 1 mana. Blossoming Defense is still a ridiculous card. I'm playing 22 lands in the deck, and it's not too complicated. Obviously, we want all 4 Hash of Oasis. This card's just stupid. We've got to play all of that. It can even make a Llanowar Elf a 4/4 if we wanted to. That's That's good sauce. But I do want to play the one copy of Scavenger Grounds here. It looks a little bit risky. I really don't want a start that includes a Steel Leaf Champion and a Scavenger Grounds along with 2 forests. I don't necessarily want that start, but I do think it's important to play at least the one Scavenger Grounds because I want the chance of being able to wipe our graveyard. I'm not even that worried about theirs. Obviously, we get theirs too, but I want to be able to wipe our graveyard when they play their Scarab God. Scarab God is a card that beats this deck, and it's one of the cards that's most popular in this format. If we can't at least do something about its ability to pull our own creatures out of our graveyard, it's going to be really tough for us to win a game against it. So, yeah, we can attack into it all the time with our huge dudes. Yeah, we can keep killing it, but it's going to keep coming back and reanimating anything it was able to block and kill itself, or anything that they were able to put into our graveyard with removal. So Scarab God is really good against us in grindy matchups, and I want the ability to neuter it at least partially, and Scavenger Grounds helps with that. But here's our sideboard right here. I've already told you about the extra copy of Blossoming Defense against removal heavy stuff. We should do that, and maybe you want to put the 4th copy in the main deck. It's all on you. Not sure what we would take out, but if you want to, the 4th copy can definitely go in. As far as Heroic Intervention, it helps too, but it's especially good against sweepers, namely Fumigate and the new Black Saga that's essentially a turn 5 Damnation. It's very good against those, and I think those will see, Fumigate will definitely still see play. And the Black Saga will at least see play at the beginning while people are testing things out. You also see the 3 Thrashing Brontodon there. I think it's going to be really important to play cards that can bust enchantments. It's already important to kill artifacts, Heart of Kirin, Godfarer's Gift, these are important artifacts to worry about, but so our Cast Out, Ixalan's Binding, and in the new standard, Seal Away will be something that we actually really have to worry about. So the ability to bust up enchantments is going to be even more important coming up. I've also got 3 Deathgorge Scavengers in there. This is a good utility sideboard piece that could also go in the main deck depending on your meta. If you're seeing a lot of Godfarer's Gift, this could definitely go straight into the main deck over another 3-drop that we're playing. I'll let you be the judge there. But this is also decent against the Scarab God when we run across it, because we can deprive them cards that they would otherwise be able to get out of a graveyard. Now, the Lifecrafter's Bestiary is in there for the control matchup. We're not great against control. We're a mid-range deck. Again, we're a mid-range deck, so control decks tend to be pretty good against us, and control decks are quite real right now. So Bestiary is a great card if we can resolve it against them, and do note that Llanowar Elves, another use for the elves. Llanowar Elves gives us the chance to play this on turn 2, on the play, when they only have 1 land out. And there's really not much they can do outside of Ceremonious Rejection to counter this if they only have 1 land out. So it's very easy now, if we're on the play, to get this up under just about any counterspell in the format. We've also got the 2 Carnage Tyrant, fairly self-explanatory. It's against control. I think that control might be an even better deck in the upcoming standard than it currently is. Blue, Black, and Grixis Control are real, very real decks in the current standard, but Black is getting a lot of good removal in Dominaria that we've already seen, so I wouldn't be surprised if Blue, Black Control and decks like it were even better in Dominaria. And Carnage Tyrant will get, better if those cards get better. So Carnage Tyrant is always a great answer against control. We want to play at least a pair. And finally, the Sky Sovereign. I do think it is really important to play this card. It gives us a creature with flying, a big creature with flying, and it gives us access to some removal. I am actually considering moving this card to the main deck. I think it's that good. Maybe we could play 1 copy of it and move it down to 3 Verdurous Gearhulk. I could see that working because there's plenty of stuff to crew this in the deck. I think there's just about 20 creatures in this deck that can crew a Sky Sovereign if you want them to. It's great to have a huge flyer, and again, green really needs removal, and this is essentially a lightning strike, multiple lightning strikes even. I actually don't have power rankings for this deck just yet, and I wouldn't be comfortable with doing that because I haven't played a whole bunch of games with it. This is mostly brewing, this is mostly speculation, and even though I do think this is the right way to build this deck right now, I still haven't done enough with it to actually be comfortable providing power rankings, so I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to do in lieu of that section is I want to talk about how easy it would be to make a black splash in this deck, or a blue splash if you wanted to, and why that seems like a boon, but it's actually kind of problematic. So here's the deal, right? Dominaria is going to bring us both the blue-green and black-green check lands which is awesome because we already have the blue-green and black-green fast lands, so it's going to be really easy to make green mana on turn 1 and then, almost any of these 3 colors on turn 2 without any of those lands coming into play tapped. We can play really fast with 3 different colors now. It's a blessing and a curse because, first of all, I think that if we did want a blue or black splash, and there are reasons for it, we want to play Fatal Push, Vraska's Contempt, we might want to play Winding Constrictor in this deck, or even Splash Blue for the Scarab God. But now, you see where I'm going. Why not just play Sultai Scarab God? One of the big advantages, if one of the only advantages to playing this deck, is that we get to play Steel Leaf Champion. We get some stuff like Territorial Allosaurus and even Galta at the top end of the curve that Constrictor decks don't play. But at the end of the day, the big reason to play Mono Green is Steel Leaf Champion. And because, again, the Sultai Scarab God deck will be able to play all of those, dual lands if it wants to, but it's probably still going to have to play some swamps and islands at the end of the day. And I think if you have to play like any non-green lands, that basically kills your ability to play Steel Leaf Champion. So I don't think Constrictor decks will play Steel Leaf Champion. Again, meaning that it's one of the only advantages to playing this deck, is we get to play a creature that powerful. But is it going to be worth it to play that over a deck like Sultai Constrictor that is proven to be ridiculous, crazy in the long game, I'm not 100% sure at the end of the day. If nothing else, the deck's price tag is really competitive, though, due to some speculation on Steel Leaf Champion, that card again. The thing started off to pre-order at like $6.50 or something like that, and it shot up to $20. I don't know if it's going to hold that value, just to let you know. But in case you're interested in checking out this deck all in one place, so you can just look at the deck list, instead of having to listen to me run my fat mouth for 20 minutes, just want to look at the deck list at your leisure. Click the first link in the description. That'll take you over to Mouse Spouts, the good people at TCG Player. They're good folks. They help out the channel an awful lot, and they're nice people. I talk to them a lot. They're good people. But help them out by clicking the first link in the description. If you want to go ahead and pre-order this whole deck, or just certain elements, you can. And even better, if you want to check all the prices for Dominaria, right now they're a pretty good pre-order price guide too. You can use TCG Player for a lot. So click the link in the description, help them out, help the channel out too. But I'm tapped out for this one. That's all I've got to say for now about Mono Green Stompy. Again, just like Wizards, I might revisit this deck once Dominaria comes out. It all depends on what pieces that we see, or if the deck is performing in the early weeks, I'll definitely revisit it. So, look forward to that. But in the meantime, like the video if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell for the notifications for more Dominaria brews and previews, which will be coming out super soon. We've already seen a couple of trickle down the pipeline, but coming up in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a storm of them. So sub if you're new, make sure you get that. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev if you're so inclined, or if you want to help out, you can always throw me $1 a month on Patreon, and I'll leave you a link in the description if you want to do that. For your $1, I'll give you stuff, I'll let you know what decks we're doing 24 hours before we do them, and you can participate in these nifty polls I keep talking about that help determine what decks are even coming up next. So do all that stuff if you're interested in helping out. This literally doesn't happen without you guys, so I appreciate all the support that you've given me so far. And if you're interested in joining the team, joining the squad, click the link in the description. But I'm pretty sure that's all for now. Make sure you let me know how you felt down there in the comments section. Anything I missed, it's always important, especially, again, during brew season. It's important that we have a talk. So we got to put our heads together on these. Let's make these decks together because it's, again, still brew season. So let me know your thoughts down there in the comments, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards. And in the meantime, spread love, be kind.